With them, I could have been a huntress on some greener planet. Another Diana, perhaps. Oh, she stamped her foot in worriment. We held creation in our grasp out here. We could have forced the last secrets from her. Yes, I will say it. We could have been as gods. And where is it ending? A mad chase after a madman. And for all the years and all the lives that have been spent on these two ships, time and space are the only winners. Nia went back to the lab. Odin and Ato continued their study of the maps. Gunnar was putting a fine edge to his broadsword. Then the warning buzzer sounded in alarm. Odin dived for the screen and turned on the controls. A long procession of mauve shadows was approaching. Already inside the barrier, they came single file and slowly circled the nebula. Even in the pale, weird light, they certainly seemed to be men. Ato ordered battle stations, and sirens sounded all over the ship. But the circling host made no offer to attack. Odin turned the receiver up to its highest point, and speaking brokenly in the language of the Bronze, a voice came through.
Men of the strange ship. Men of the strange ship.
Yes, Odin answered.
Good, you hear me. We are those who have been driven out of the city. We would visit you in peace. We are called Lorens.
Within a few minutes, a dozen of the strangers had been brought aboard the nebula. Ato summoned Nia and the rest of the captains. The leader of the visitors was a man by the name of Val. He was a tall, lean man with a Norman nose, and his dark skin was drawn so tightly about his face that he looked a bit like a mummy. Val was over 60, Odin judged, and though his wrists were skinny, the tendons and muscles on the arms stood out like taut lengths of cable. He and his men were dressed alike, a sleeveless shirt of walnut brown plastic, dark peg-bottomed trousers of corduroy, and footgear that looked like engineer's boots with rippled soles. The tops of the boots were tight-fitting and the peg-bottomed trousers were drawn snugly over them. Odin learned later what had appeared to be green moss out there on the weathered plain was a kind of thistle with cat-claw thorns. Each man wore a heavy black belt about his waist. Attached to the belt were at least a dozen weapons. Several grenades, a pistol, another pistol with a flaring muzzle, a long knife, a glassy-looking tube fitted to a pistol butt, and a blue-black ugly thing which was shaped like an oversized toadstool. In addition to this odd assortment of gear, each man carried something in his hand which greatly resembled the frame of an old-fashioned umbrella, except that half a dozen varied-colored buttons were set into the handle.
It was nearly 30 years ago, Val was explaining, that the voice of Grimhagen began to interfere with our broadcasting system. Some said it was God. Some said it was a devil. It came from space. It came from almost everywhere. We have been an intelligent race, but we were sore beset. Our sun was dying. All that we had was our sun, and a huge dust cloud in the distance. In times past, our astronomers had seen the glow of millions of suns, millions upon millions of miles away, but we were never able to perfect a telescope that could bring a single sun into view. Nor did we ever have a chance to do this. The dust cloud surged out toward us every 20 years, and our scientists were able to use a gravitational beam to deflect a part of it toward our sun. In this way we kept it alive, and might have been able to do so for ages, but now the dust cloud is gone.
Val paused to sigh and then resumed his story.
The voice of Grimhagen, promised my people that if they would accept him, he would take them forth into the stars. They would plunder thousands of worlds, and they would live for centuries while generations died. Also, he said, he was on the brink of discovering eternal life.
He was playing at being the eternal Loki, the old mischief maker, Gunnar interrupted, and went on edging his sword.
Well,
Val continued,
I cannot blame my people too much for believing this story. Our plight was desperate. there were those of us who did not believe him. He seemed to know too much. When according to our philosophy, the only wise man is the one who admits he knows nothing."
"I'm not a philosopher," Gunnar interrupted again. "I only know that once you've thrust a foot of steel into a man, he does not bother you again." "Please, Gunnar," Ato begged. "Let Val go on with his story."
"The rest of the story I do not understand at all," Val said with a shake of his grizzled head. "This Grim Hagen said he did not age until he stopped to conquer a planet and replenish his ship's energy. It was 30 years ago when he first spoke to us. He looks like a man of 45 now. Could he have been an upstart of 15 when he first spoke to our receivers?"
"I will try to explain that later," Ato answered.
Well, there were those of us who could not agree with the general idea. There are even some of the Lorans in the Violet Dome who think he is a god. We think he is an evil man. We have no desire to plunder the stars. If he is so great, why doesn't he give new life to our feeble sun? That is what we really need. Meanwhile, the people of the Dome are building 5 new ships, as Grim Hagen directed. They have been working upon them for years."
"Good God," Jack Odin was thinking. "What a hideous propaganda machine these ships are. To condition and instruct a whole generation while you flash through space in the twinkling of an eye."
"And that is all,"
Val finished with a shrug of his lean shoulders.
"Those of us who had never agreed with the idea were thrown out of the city as soon as Grim Hagen arrived. We have come to join forces with you."
"How did you get through the barrier?" Nia asked. Val lifted the umbrella frame.
"We've had the barrier for years. There are strange beasts out there on the plain. This instrument allows us to go through the barrier when we please."
"Then we can go to the city?" Gunnar exclaimed with a joyful war whoop. "To kill and kill and kill." "You are right," Ato admitted. "Delay will only increase Grim Hagen's advantage. To the city, as fast as we can." End of chapter 14.